On the morning of March 5, 1983, the small central California town of Grange is abuzz with excitement at the news that England's Queen Elizabeth and husband Prince Phillip are on their way through en route to Yosemite National Park. The royal couple is in their last stretch of a rare 10-day visit to the Golden State, which today is dark with gloomy rain clouds. A scattering of onlookers line Highway 132 to catch a glimpse of the Queen's limousine as it passes by. But 15 minutes up the road, tragedy unfolds when vehicles of the security detail collide head-on, killing 3 Secret Service agents on impact. On this episode of History Hunters, Jeff and Sarah revisit the forgotten site of the crash that shocked the Queen as they search for traces of the wreck.
It was to provide security for the Queen of England.
Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip arrive in California on February 26, 1983, for a busy itinerary that starts in San Diego.
The Navy's 50 States flag team provided a colorful backdrop as Her Majesty inspected the Navy and Marine Honor Guard and for the playing of God Save the Queen and our national anthem.
After a number of ceremonies and tours, the royal couple moves to a private estate in Palm Springs, followed by a celebration at 20th Century Fox Studios. On March 1st, the Queen motors to President Reagan's ranch near Santa Barbara. The next day, the Queen and Prince sail up the coast to San Francisco Bay Area, where they tour the Hewlett-Packard plant. A tour of Sutter's Fort in Sacramento and a luncheon at the state capitol take up most of March 4th before a flight back to San Francisco for a party that evening. The Queen is looking forward to a quiet stay in Yosemite National Park. To pull it off, reservations for all 121 rooms of the Ahwahnee Hotel have been canceled for Saturday, March 5th and Sunday, March 6th. The entire trip to California was plagued with wet and cold weather, not unlike that of the United Kingdom. The Queen took notice during a speech in San Francisco.
I knew before we came that we had exported many of our traditions to the United States, but I had not realized before that weather was one of them. But, Mr. President, if the climate has been cool, your welcome and that of the American people has been wonderfully warm.
The skies cleared up for the Sacramento tour of Sutter's Fort. Early on March 5th, the Queen flies aboard Air Force Two from San Francisco to Castle Air Force Base in Atwater. A rock slide has blocked Highway 140, the most direct route to Yosemite, so the preferred alternate route sends the motorcade through Snelling, up State Route J59 to LaGrange, and east on State Route 132 to Coulterville and Buck Meadows. The 107-mile route on winding roads through foothills will prove deadly for 3 Secret Service agents traveling in advance of the Queen. At 10:31 a.m., a westbound Mariposa County Sheriff's car driven by Deputy Rod Sinclair and an eastbound Secret Service rental car driven by Agent George LaBarge will collide nearly head-on with catastrophic results. After an extensive investigation into the deadly crash, blame is assigned to both drivers. State highway officials later abandoned the deadly curve by shifting the highway to the west. Jeff remembers the precise location of the crash site because, as a local small-town newspaper reporter, he showed up shortly after the bodies of the victims were removed. These are some of the photos he took that day.
To cover the Queen's visit, we had to get media credentials issued by the office of Willie Brown, the Speaker of the State Assembly, and helping me to do that was Assemblyman Gary Condit. I stopped by Condit's office for a short chat and was on my way. Later, Condit wrote me a note about the Queen's visit. 18 years later, as a U.S. Congressman, Condit was embroiled in the Chandra Levy scandal and fodder for the unrelenting gossip magazines. His political career was destroyed.
For the first time in 35 years, Jeff returns to the crash site, this time with Sarah. Together, they will use aerial and ground photos of the crash to pinpoint the exact spot where the Secret Service car came to rest.
Well, actually, this is the route the Queen came. Queen Elizabeth came here in '83.
Actually, this is the route the Queen came?
Well, this, from that corner, she drove right where we are today. She came to Yosemite, and the reason she came this route is they flew her to Castle Air Force Base. Highway 140 was blocked by a rock slide, so they brought her this way. And it was a very dark, dismal, and rainy day. Michael Landon filmed in that building right there.
I'll tell you, it's the most remarkable thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, you mean how quick he recovered?
No, I mean how much he ate for breakfast.
Oh. Doc, I can't thank you enough for what you did.
1 year after the Queen zipped through, I was back in LaGrange covering Michael Landon, who was filming an episode of Highway to Heaven there with co-star Victor French. He was agreeable to pose for photos, including one with my grandmother, and sign autographs, but he didn't seem too eager to answer my questions. I found out later that he could be short with media people, and I guess I was no exception.
This place looks like a beat-up town. Doesn't even look like a town, really. But it looks sure beat up.
I was standing out in front of this store right here when the Queen came by.
You watched the Queen go by.
I did. And then she goes around this corner and slips out of view. 15 to 20 minutes up the road, however, there was a crash, and all 3 Secret Servicemen were killed on impact. If the Queen had looked off to the right, because she was on the right side of the road, she would have seen...
That's an awful neck turn to see.
She would have seen that schoolhouse down there.
Wasn't there animals in there one time?
There was. They were right here.
Oh, they're here. And there's there's horse. Why did they put horses in there?
I don't know.
And goats. This is an old schoolhouse, obviously.
I lost you to a kitty.
Look at this kid.
Oh, there he is. I don't know how the Queen didn't get carsick. This is the way it is for like 107 miles. Winding, curvy roads. The wreckage blocked the entire highway. And it just so happened that the wreck occurred between 2 streets that allowed the Queen to take a diversion right around the accident scene. She was able to look out the window and see the wreckage off to the side and was clearly shaken about what had taken place. This road right here is Jalapa Way. Yeah.
It's up on the hill.
This is the way the Queen went around the crash site, which was right over there. We're gonna find it. This is the old highway right here. So the deadly path was right through here. Looks like the old asphalt was ripped up. I've got a little ankle bite here that doesn't want to do this, but it's kind of what she does.
Well, this one on the other is kind of boring.
She says this is a boring history, huh? She just doesn't appreciate American history. Although this is kind of a morbid history, though. Most people don't know where this location is. There's no evidence of a road here anymore. This is the exact curve where the crash occurred. This is the exact spot. Somebody put a pole right here on the ground where the car ended up landing. Secret Service car ended up right here. Let me show you something.
They're curious if the ground will yield any evidence of the wreck.
Yeah, this is it. I'm not seeing any evidence of crash. But then again, it's been 30 something years. Here's a piece of plastic, but I don't know if that's it. You don't think so?
I know so. Look at the plastic.
Well, the crash itself occurred right over here. But you know, with the passage of time, 30 plus years, well, there's nothing left of it. This is interesting. This is the last remnants of the highway right here. I'm actually re-looking at this picture right here, and I'm seeing that post was actually in the crash picture, and I'm not sure if it was a road sign that had actually been sheared off when the car hit it. I'm gonna go in there and see if I can find some of the wreckage back there. It's underneath this overgrown tree that wasn't here 30 years ago. I dug up this piece of plastic that's blue. I don't know if it's from the crash site, but it's actually in this exact spot where the car came to rest. It could be part of the car. Kind of a sad place to be. I'm sure they had families and wives that were shocked at what happened here so many years ago. The town of LaGrange owes its roots to the gold rush. Around 1852, a group of French immigrants found ample gold here and set up a town. 2 years later, it had a post office. By 1856, LaGrange was a bustling place and became the county seat of Stanislaus County. Saloon gunfights were not uncommon, so a jail was built at a cost of $3,500, and as an afterthought, a second floor was added for $500 more. Use of the jail was postponed until the county chipped in $28 for the locks on the cells, something somebody forgot. In its heyday, LaGrange swelled in population with an estimated 1,500 Chinese immigrants. By 1870, LaGrange was a played-out mining camp and on the decline. So this is where the gold dredge is. It's back this way. We're going to see if we can go back there. The Queen could have, if she went by through here, Looked out the window and seen the dredge, but she probably didn't do that.
There's another flat something.
Roadkill. Raccoon, I'd say.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There's another one up there.
Another roadkill. Well, maybe that's not such a good thing to talk about on this particular episode of History Hunters. So this guy up in Canada purchased this dredge, what's left of it, and he was going to haul it up to Canada, and he left it partially dismantled because I guess he ran out of money. But this is what's left of it up here. Fieldhauser of California's Gold did come to this location.
It's historic. The clampers put up the plaque, and here's where we're going. Right across this open field, it's off in the distance. It's old, it's rusty, it's sitting there kind of forlorn. We're heading over there right now to check it out.
We'll be able to tell if there's bees once they started swarming. If you want, I'll go ahead of you. I understand if you don't bug them, they won't bug you. These are some of the cables that were used in the dredge operation. Sarah's probably trying to figure out a way to break into it. Indeed, she has. Some of the cables, somebody tried to cut through them. They were cutting pieces of this off. I guess they were going to reassemble it in Canada. These obviously were where the cables ran onto these giant pulleys. She just went down. I missed it. You okay? There's a cross of somebody who died doing what you're doing. What are you doing? Is it pretty stable?
Yeah, I'm just a chicken.
We're on the dredge. Hopefully we don't fall through this rotten metal.
Obviously every gang member in the area has found it too. Oh, look at the owl.
Oh yeah. Big barn owl just took off. It's cool. Did you go up the stairs?
I did. There's probably nothing over here.
She's crazy.
Oh, look, the gold. It's in there.
Sure it is.
It's all kinds of gravel.
Oh yeah, let's see. This apparently is a party spot because there's a lot of broken glass and graffiti up here. So this is why you don't go on dredges and stuff, because you're not supposed to do like this. I ran my head right into some metal. I hope it doesn't require stitches. This was not a good ending for History Hunters. It's probably oil.
It's gooey. Yeah, it's gooey. Look, it's stuck.
Well, 2 weeks ago, I busted my head here, so we decided to come back here and get some a better look at the dredge.
Apparently there's a piece of gold, or what Jeff thinks is a piece of gold in there. Step on it first.
I think it's gonna be safe. If this thing turns, I'm dead. I thought I saw some gold down here. Piece of foil. Somebody left a candy wrap.
Oh, yeah. Child's imagination and hopes. You ain't have to climb, bud.
After last week.
Is it?
Oh yeah, that's an owl pellet, all right. Disgusting.
I don't know if they poop or they vomit it.
Do you see that pulley right there on the side? And that cable? I understand that's what dragged this dredge along. They actually anchored it somewhere on the ground and they pulled it. It was said that on a good week that this dredge pulled in 35 pounds of gold a week, which equated to about $20,000. This dredge was rebuilt in 1922 and 1934, but during the war, these operations ceased. In 1946, the Grange Dredge Company reopened its operations. And in that same year, Stanislaus County was the 4th largest gold producer in California. And most of the gold was taken out of this area. This piece of metal right here, this bolt, this metal, it's got my hair in it. It's what I hit last week. So, it's nasty. I had to go get a tetanus shot right after it.
Just a pile of rocks.
If you're anything like me, a visit to a historic place like LaGrange prompts me to learn more about the history. Sarah was right, LaGrange has seen its better days, but then again, she's old and worn out. I mean the town, not Sarah. Not much has changed here in the last 50 or 100 years. The old Shell station where locals pumped gas during the war is no longer a place to fill her up, and is a bit more rusty than when the Queen rolled by. The old Floto Hotel, which housed men who built the first Don Pedro Dam in the 1920s, prominently dominates a corner of the town still. Just be careful not to park where Bill does, whoever he is. The imposing brick and concrete Lavaggi Saloon building, built in 1897, remains the local watering hole. The old Hammond and Bates General Store, the same store that has served LaGrange since 1878, and also the very store I was standing in front of when the Queen rolled by, is still selling groceries today. It's been said that you can't go back, but whoever said that probably hasn't been to LaGrange.
I cannot believe it. This place has not changed an iota since I was a kid, not even a little bit.
As for the piece of plastic retrieved from the crash site, I'm convinced that it was a piece of the death car's front bumper area. The paint is a match to the color of the Secret Service car, an early 1980s blue Dodge Aries. At the time, $21. This dredge was rebuilt in 1922